Hi, Nathan, and welcome to Entrepreneurcast. It's so great to have you with us today.
Hello, it's my pleasure.
So, Nathan, before we get going with the business side of things, tell us a little bit about who are you outside of your business and what do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
What I enjoy doing in my spare time, I enjoy music. I've longed to be able to play an instrument, but yet never been able to. But I still enjoy music and going to concerts and things like that. And I'm a big football fan. So, I mean, I play football kind of 3, 4 times a week usually. I've got to do something because my diet's not great. So I've got to do something to stay on track.
Brilliant. What instrument would you like to play?
Well, do you know, I'd love to have played the guitar. And about 5 years ago, I bought my first guitar thinking, right, this is it. This is the time I'm going to be able to finally learn to play guitar.
Mm.
And I snapped a string while I was tuning the thing before I'd even played a note. And it's sat in the cupboard ever since because I've never known how to restring a guitar. So I think it would be guitar or piano. Whether that'll ever happen until I retire, I don't know.
And that's really funny because when I was a kid, I really wanted to play the piano,
Yeah.
and that was like my dream. And I used to sing. So my grandparents back then said we don't have space for a piano,
Mm.
and they wouldn't get me guitar either. So I ended up not playing anything, and I'm with the same kind of thing in the back of my head. Well, maybe one day I'll actually get around to it. Maybe we'll get around to it together.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Nathan, tell us about your business. What is it that you do, and what inspired you to start it?
Well, my business right now is email marketing. So most of the work that I do is helping businesses in one way or another to generate leads and sales using email marketing. So most of the work that I do is either in managing their campaigns for them, or as a speaker and a trainer, I share the methodology and the strategies that I have for email marketing from stage. And a great one of those is some of the live demonstrations that I do, because a common misconception is that it can be difficult or that it can take a huge amount of time. So what I love doing is breaking that little myth by actually showing them in an hour and a half to 2 hours exactly how it's done by doing it in front of their very eyes. It's great to see a result that you can get within a short space of time. What inspired me to start it as a business was really that it came from a hobby. So it's less unique now, but it was quite unique at the time that I started my business when I was 12 years old. So that was
Wow.
14, nearly 15 years ago. And that really stemmed from a hobby. My hobby was I love designing websites. So I was a bit of a geek. I love designing websites that were aimed at 12-year-olds. So they had games and jokes and funny stories, things like that. And it didn't take me long to realize that there were people who had exactly the same skills that I did, who were doing the same things, but they were doing it for businesses instead and earning quite a bit of money, or at least quite a bit of money for a 12-year-old. So I figured, well, I could probably do that myself. I could take those skills, and as long as that I could understand what the difference was between a games and jokes website compared to a website that was going to be able to market a business, then I'd be able to build a business of my own. So that was what I did. I decided I was going to go out and do it even without those skills and make a go of it. And 14 years later, the business turned into something that is grew into a full agency, kind of scaled down to me being able to share that methodology for people to be able to do it themselves. And the lessons that I've kind of taken from that have been really getting clear on what it is that I wanted to do and actually removing all the things that I didn't. So over the years, I've said yes to so many pieces of work that I didn't really want to do. And I know a few people do that, but it's easy to do when you want the money, when you want to be able to get work in and make sure that you're able to put food on the table. It's easy to say yes and quite difficult to say no. And it's probably 2 or 3 years ago that I learned to start saying no to more things, which is why the business now is really focused on either email marketing or anything that's going to be able to improve a business's email marketing. So some squeeze pages, landing pages, things like that. But for the most part, it's all built around generating leads and sales using email.
Amazing. 12 years old. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Does it mean you never had a job in your life?
I've never had a full-time job.
Wow.
So when I was about 17, the idea of driving a car and having bills like insurance and wow, a 17-year-old boy trying to get insurance, it's expensive.
Mm.
Um, So I didn't want, because my business at that time, I could earn £4,000 or £5,000 from a website project. But because I was still learning the ropes, those website projects could take me a little while to deliver, and they could be kind of 3 or 4 months apart. So me making sure that I had money for insurance and all the things that I wanted to do with growing my business and reinvesting in my own marketing meant that the idea of only having one project every 3 or 4 months, regardless of how well paid, scared me. So I got a part-time job in a coffee shop. It's a job that I loved. I loved almost the art of creating coffee, and it sounds really poncy to say, but that's something that I really loved. So I got to have a part-time job that was also a hobby. But I've never had a full-time job, and I don't think I ever will.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So Nathan, between your business and football and, all the activities that you do, what would you say your typical day looks like?
My typical day depends on whether there are campaigns going out. So, for example, most of the days of the week, I'm either booked to speak at an event or there is a campaign going out. So I give clients deadlines on when they need to get content or any guidance to me for their campaign well ahead of time to make sure that there is time to do it. But for example, on Wednesdays and Thursdays, they're my busiest days for campaigns that are going out for clients. So usually on a Wednesday or Thursday, it's a case of chasing the content that should have came in the day before from clients and actually getting the campaigns out. So we work to quite a tight deadline because that's what's going to work best for the client, because then they can include content that is going to be timely and up to date. So it's not uncommon, especially last year when we had celebrity deaths, for example, if someone wanted to include a reference to that, if it happened the night before, they might want to add something into their campaign that is almost a commemoration to the celebrity death, for example. So they're things that can happen just on the fly, and you want to be able to include them. So it's important, I find, that I can react to those extra bits of content that need to go into campaigns.
You said your busiest days with campaigns are Wednesdays and Thursdays. Is there a
Yes.
reason for that? Is it what client chooses, or is that what you advise to kind of, send out most of the stuff on those days?
It's a bit of both. I tend not to recommend that clients send campaigns on Mondays. It has to be something that fits with their schedule, but also as long as it goes out, for example, if they're sending a weekly campaign, as long as the campaign goes out on the same day of each week, we find that we can form a part of readers' routines. So when we first start, their readers are already doing lots of things. They're already busy with their own lives and their own businesses. So you have to break their routine before your email can then become a part of their routine. So making sure that it's on the same day each week is a great way of being able to do that. And Tuesdays to Thursdays, if you're in a B2B, business to business kind of environment, then Tuesdays to Thursdays tend to work best.
So what's wrong with Mondays?
Mondays, we've had some good results from emails that are sent on Mondays, as long as it's the right type of content. But what tends to be wrong with Mondays is that your emails sit in the same place as all the emails that came in between Friday 5 p.m. and Monday morning. If they haven't been opening them over the weekend, it's less and less true, because businesses and people, entrepreneurs, are tied to their mobiles. So the emails that they're receiving over the weekend, they're probably already read anyway. But we want to just give ourselves the best chance of success. So are we going to take a chance on a Monday, or should we just be safe and play it with a Tuesday or a Wednesday? Simple as that.
Awesome. And do you recommend to people to email out like once a week, twice a week, or what's like, how regular should it go? Because I think that's something that a lot of people actually trying to figure out and never really know, because if you kind of send it out too often, then people might unsubscribe, and then if it's not often enough, then
You miss the
don't see
opportunity.
enough. So
And it is a tricky point, but there is a hard and fast rule, which is email as often as you have something valuable to say. If you are committing to send a daily email and find that you don't have something of value to say every day, well, then you're emailing too often. There is generally the biggest objection that I get to using email marketing is that it doesn't work because people are receiving so many emails. And it's true. It doesn't work because people are sending so many emails, but only if you're doing it wrong. If the emails that you're providing are valuable to your readers and to your target market ultimately, then people will want to read your emails. As long as the content is valuable, entertaining, inspiring, whatever it is that fits around your business, it just has to be of value and of interest to them. So actually the argument that you're emailing too often rarely comes into play as long as what you're sending is useful.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Nathan.
You're welcome.
So, Nathan, throughout our entrepreneurial and business journey, we do come across a lot of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say was your greatest challenge, and how did you manage to overcome it?
Well, I've had a few challenges. The one that springs to mind most was quite early on in my business career. It was when I was 15. And at that point, I'd hit some significant success. I was building a business that I was certainly proud of. And I was building a business that was paying me a handsome income. And I got referred into a project which was way in excess of what I'd be able to deliver on my own. So figuring that I'd need to bring in other team to be able to deliver on it, but also being mindful of the fact I was in school 5 days a week, meant that I had a challenge to get around there. So the challenge was overcome really by building a freelance team. And it's a freelance team that I still have today, albeit to a lesser extent. But I built a team up of people who would help me to deliver on these projects, who were delivering on their own businesses and working with other clients as well, but helped me to be able to build a team, but without having to be in an office 5 days a week when I should have been at school. And the project that I had, the long and short of it is that I, for the first time, was working with a team, but this client that I was working with went bust halfway through the project. And of course that can happen. And we have little things that we put into place to be able to prevent that affecting our own businesses. But this was the first time where the long and short is that I wasn't going to get paid, but I still had a team who I'd have to pay for the work that they were putting in on this project. And at 15, I was scared. I was really scared. I ended up having to borrow the money to pay the team of people from my grandmother. That's a driver like no one can imagine. To be able to make a success of your business, being able to pay her back was a huge driver. But also there was a lesson there. And the lesson was I'd let that business take control of my own business. I'd only been in the job that I was doing, in the entrepreneurial journey, if you like, for 3 years. But I'd learned that there were a few things I could do to prevent those situations, which were have a contract in place. They were take a deposit up front, especially if you're working with teams, so that you can pay your team. But also I had processes around when payment should be taken and what steps needed to go into place to make sure that I was protected. But this client wanted to work quickly. And I let them work quickly, and I let them take control of my processes. So all the little safeguards that I'd put into place, I just ignored in the interest of working with this big, huge client at the time for the business that I was in. I let them take control of my process, which was a dreadful thing to do. So yeah, it became a driver, but yeah, it was certainly a challenge to overcome at quite an early age.
Which is wonderful, because obviously when you learn that early, plus I think that early you still kind of, even though you were scared in a way, you still were kind of fearless. I think when we're kids, that's what happens, right? We're going through those years. It's even though you can be scared, but you have that drive and you can overcome it. I think with age, a lot of people struggling more with that.
And I can understand why people are more uncomfortable, because there's a lot more at risk. I was fortunate in a way because yes, you did need to be fearless, and yes, I was doing things that belied my age, but I had very few risks. Apart from the fact that I'd then have to pay that team, I still had family behind me who'd be held to support me. There was always going to be a roof over my head and food on the table, regardless of whether I did it. So I almost got to play with business in like a sandbox and be able to do it without any of the risks that would be associated with needing to pay bills. So I was fortunate in a way, and I can understand why people are more reluctant to take those risks later on in life when there's more on the line. But also, I think we have to be mindful of whether that becomes an excuse rather than a reason for why you won't do something. When does that become an excuse for why you won't do something because the risk is too big? Actually, what steps can you put into place to just negate the risk and make it less risky?
So Nathan, we covered your challenges and how scary it was, and you did overcome it in the end. But on the bright side of things, what would you say was your greatest success?
I'd like to think I've had quite a few successes, and I've always been one for, although I've struggled with goal setting in a way, I've always had certain ideas of the things that I wanted to achieve. So being able to write my first book, have it out in people's hands and people saying it was a good book that helped them in their businesses, that's a nice feeling. There are awards that I've won. Do you know what? It can become a bit of a thing. I don't want to be too big-headed here. I've achieved a huge amount that I'm really, really proud of. But actually, some of the brightest achievements come from some of the smallest things that I've been able to do. So for a long time, less so now, but for a long time, I worked in schools and sharing an entrepreneurial message and some entrepreneurial journey ideas with young people. And although you can get great testimonials from people telling you that an email campaign delivered X amount return on investment, or a website was great because it generated so many leads, there are very few things that compare to the response you can get from a young person, 15, 16, saying, hey, do you know what? I might actually go and start my own business. I think it's something that I could do. And to think that you've had an impact in them being able to make that decision, as long as it's the right decision for them, is so rewarding. Really, really cool. So there's some of the things that I look back on with young people that I've met, that I've been able to speak to and share some ideas with, that they've been able to say that they can do something different. Hey, it just feels so cool.
Well, I'm sure some of the people you worked with and spoke to, they got really inspired by you. But you yourself, do you have any people that inspire you and so-called personal heroes?
Personal heroes. There's I mentioned my grandmother. My nan is someone who I looked up to for a long time because she held our family together through not particularly bad times, but she held our family together through just being such a giving person. So a personal role model has always been her for that very reason. I've had loads of business role models and people who I've respected for different reasons within business. And I've even been fortunate to be able to work with many of those people. There's no one anyone I particularly know, no celebrity mentors, no celebrity people that I've looked up to and said, everybody should look at them because they're an amazing business person, because I'm well aware that everybody finds their own mentors and finds their own people they look up to for different reasons. So for me to say that, well, I love Richard Branson because he's an amazing business person, well, he has his fallacies. He has the things that are wrong with him as well, and everybody does. So I just think it's the mentors that I have, I'm not sure it'd be particularly useful to anyone else.
No, that's very interesting, because a lot of people I interview, the biggest inspiration and the personal heroes are their parents, or someone close to them, or a lot of people also say their clients. So it's, you're not far off from all the other people I've interviewed, to be
Yeah, I
honest.
mean, and all those are true, and we take inspiration from so many people in our lives. I'd like to take it as read that we take inspiration from the people who are around us and closest to us. Yeah, I think it's more a case of being aware of what's the reasons why you look into different people and see particular traits that you like. Identify the traits rather than the individual people, and I think that can be really useful.
Nathan, just for fun, really, I always ask this question: where do you come up with your best ideas?
My best ideas. I I try and make as much time as possible to think as I possibly can. And with the kind of work that I do, I'm driving a lot and listening to podcasts and kind of using that as the old phrase, the mobile university. We're listening to podcasts and audiobooks and business resources in the car. That's where I tend to get the most ideas. And Siri is my best friend because I can just dictate to Siri, set a reminder or make a note of this just in the middle of an audiobook. And it's something that I can do in time that otherwise would have been pretty useless with just concentrating on what I'm doing. I can listen to something, I can make a note, it can spark an idea. And that's pretty cool. I'm also a member of the Professional Speaking Association. It's an organization that I have a lot of love for. It's a tribe of people who support and can help you in areas relating to speaking, which is obviously something that I do. And many of the ideas come from conversations with people there that I am close to. So I have a mastermind group of people who are also speakers, and just being able to have them as a sounding board, have them as people that I can communicate with and say, what do you think of this? Get their ideas, get their take on it. Sparks up so many things that you otherwise wouldn't have thought of.
Nathan, you've been in business for a long time, I would say. Obviously, all
Yeah,
your adult life and the whole of your
yeah.
teen years. It's a long time, and you've been pretty successful with what you've been doing. So, out of your experience and out of all these years, what would be your top three tips and strategies for the listener today for, to drive the business forward?
Well, all of my tips come around marketing, really. And I think one of the biggest ones is to understand that you are not your customer. So with all of the marketing that you do, whether it be designing a business card or creating an email campaign or creating a website, whatever it might be, it's very easy to focus on the things that you either find visually appealing or the things that you think would work for you. But actually, very rarely are the things that you like the same things that your customer would like. So if you think that you'd respond to a particular subject line, for example, in an email campaign, chances are it's not the same things that your customers would respond to. So you are not your customer is the one that I would suggest as being a real focus for any marketing that you're doing. Have a look at what it is that your customers would respond to best. And if you're not sure of what those things are, ask them. Ask them what they are. Treat your customers with respect and put yourself in their shoes to see what they're most likely to respond to with their challenges, their opportunities, and where they are in their lives and their businesses. Another, I think, would be around email marketing, and I alluded to it a little bit there, which is about subject lines. There is a lot of work that you can put into an email campaign that can all be undone if you don't give enough thought and pay enough attention to the subject line that you're using. So for those who perhaps aren't aware, the subject line is the little piece of text that you see next to the from name and address when you have an email in your inbox. And typically people will put things like March newsletter or special offers or something as bland and vanilla as that. Very rarely do they get a high open rate because people have already made a decision on whether they want to buy from you or take the action that you want them to take just based on the subject line. So most people undo all the work that they put into their campaigns by just not giving enough thought to the subject line. So I would just suggest making them interesting and intriguing. And if you do that, people will open your emails. And if they open your emails, they're far more likely to read them. And if they read them, they're far more likely to take the action that you want them to take. So there would be my two kind of tips that come to mind.
And with the subject line, do you recommend to follow any specific kind of template when you come up with the subject lines? Because I know when it comes to email marketing, there is a lot of copywriting involved. And I know that tons of people really struggle with copywriting. And I
Yeah.
know it because I'm one of them. So do you advise any sort of specific kind of way of going about it? Like, specific things you have to put or triggers, whatever, better than I do.
Well, on subject lines, there isn't necessarily a template because I have kind of 9 or 10 different kinds of subject lines. Some of those are questions, for example. Some of those are designed to mimic other emails that they're likely to receive. Some are targeted towards whether they are plumbers, dads, mothers, etc. All different kinds of ways that they would feel targeted. So that's another kind of subject line. So there isn't really a template for those, rather a 9 or 10 different kinds of subject lines that you can use. It's the book that I've just finished, which isn't out yet. There is a book on 171 different subject lines you can use because there are that many, aren't there? It is like plucking one out of the air and seeing whether it gets a result. But as long as we can test what kind of things work, then that's cool. There is a template, however, for a sales style email. And the one kind of precursor to this is before you send a sales email to your list, you have to have earned the right to be able to do so. So you have to have given them value so that they respond to your sales style email. But when you are writing a sales email, I recommend that it has a few key elements, 5 key elements. The first of those is an attention-grabbing subject line, as you may have guessed. So it has to be something that's interesting and intriguing and gets them to open the email. the first part of the content within the email should have a compelling proposition. So this is the product or service that you offer. And the key part of that really is that it needs to be a compelling proposition. So just offering accountancy services or being a solicitor is not a compelling proposition. Packaging up what you offer or making it into a special offer is a way of making it genuinely compelling. So adding a packaged up price, maybe it's a discount, maybe it's an extra freebie that you can give in addition to your core service, a way of making the proposition genuinely compelling. Another part of it is having a third-party endorsement. So this is a testimonial, something written or maybe a video where a client or someone who's experienced your product or service says wonderful things about how good it is. It's far more likely then that people will trust their word than they will yours. So it takes away some of the risk in the reader and the buyer's mind as to whether you're worth dealing with. The next is a reason to take action now. So the reason to take action now is, why should they do it right now rather than leave it a week or leave it a month or something like that? So it might be that there are only a certain number available, only 4 or 5 of this product available, maybe a certain number of tickets available for a workshop that you're running. Maybe it's that a price is available until a certain date, or maybe it's that you are only offering a certain number of that particular product or service. So we've got an attention-grabbing subject line, a compelling proposition, third-party endorsement, a reason to take action now, and then the final one is a call to action. How can they take advantage of the offer? Do they need to reply to the email? Do they need to click on a link? Do they need to call a phone number? Tell people exactly what it is you want them to do to be able to take advantage of the offer. So there are 5 steps there for how you can create a compelling sales email.
Wow, it sounds like quite a long email.
Well, as long as you pluck the essence from each of those parts, your email, you can do that successfully, generally in around 300 to 400 words, which isn't very much at all.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Nathan. And throughout your journey, did you come across any sort of resources that made your business and life easier for yourself that you could share with us as well?
Definitely. And there are books that I love. There are podcasts. There are audiobooks. There are all different kinds of things. A surprising one with speaking is that I've actually found that doing stand-up comedy was a great way of being able to find how you can inject humor into what you do and also to be a more confident presenter. So that was pretty cool. Some of the books that I loved as I was literally growing up, but as I was starting my business, were Mastering the Rockefeller Habits by Vern Harnish. That's a great book. Some of the more common ones that people may already know are The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. There's The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. There are all different kinds of books. My bookshelf downstairs is absolutely packed. And I suppose I can talk through some specific examples of things that have been useful to me. But I think just the idea of making regular time to be able to invest in your own education, regardless of what it is, whether it's something that is most suitable to you or whether it's business in general, just making the time and committing to a regular time to be able to invest in your own education has got to be cool.
And you mentioned a few books there, but did you ever come across a book that you could say changed your life?
A book that changed my life.
Yeah.
Wow. What book would I say had changed my life? I think it was actually The Chimp Paradox. The Chimp Paradox did, because there were a few things that I think were going on in my head around my own productivity, my own kind of self-belief and things like that, that it's almost like there was a problem that I wasn't aware of. So I knew there were certain limitations that I had, but I wasn't really aware of how they were manifesting themselves. And reading The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters was a book that helped to describe the things that I was feeling without really knowing what they were. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So that book certainly did that. I think if there's one book I'd say changed my life, it was The Chimp Paradox, yeah.
Amazing. Nathan, again, you've been in business for a long time and you came a long way. But what is next for you? What's your next big goal, dream, aim? And if there is somebody listening today who could potentially help you get there, who would it be?
My primary goal at the moment is increasing my recurring revenue. So part of the reason why I dropped websites was because a huge amount of my time was being taken up by projects that were irregular but would be big amounts of money. So it's not something that I could really rely on. Whereas with email marketing, one thing that I've been able to do over the last year or so is build up a recurring revenue, so that as long as I keep clients happy, as long as they keep getting a return on their investment, they'll stay with me. And it also means that they'll stay with me and that money comes in each month. So that's really about me being able to build a business that's strong and a business that can then work without me in the future. If one person could help me, it would be that if you see an opportunity to be able to send regular and consistent communications to your customers and you'd like help with doing that, then that's something that I can certainly help with. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we are coming to the end of the show, Nathan. It's been incredible. But before we say our goodbyes, is there anything else you would like to share with us today or advise on?
What would I like to share? I am very keen to get across just how effective email marketing can be for people. So whether you decide to do it yourself or work with someone else to do it, all I suggest is make use of it in some way. So if you've been procrastinating over sending an email campaign, if you've been thinking I should give it a try, it really is easier than you think. And honestly, in the space of an hour or two, you can send an email campaign that gets you a result. So if you've been thinking about doing it, do it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been great catching up. It's been some really good stuff there.
You're welcome.
For anyone who would like to get in touch with you or follow you, what's the best way?
So my website is nathanlittleton.co.uk, and on Twitter I am Nath Speaks, NATHSPEAKS.
Thanks a lot for coming on the show. It's been great privilege to have you, and I really look forward to catching up with you in person again soon.
You're welcome. Thank you.